The moment of realization. When households understand the slowdown. Tonight, I want to tell you a story. Not about charts, not about forecasts, not about policy debates. This is a story about the moment when millions of households across the country begin to feel something shifting beneath their feet. A moment when the economy stops being an abstract idea and becomes a lived experience. A moment when people look around and quietly realize that something has changed. This is a narrative episode. A story told through the eyes of families, workers, neighbors, and small business owners. A story about the emotional turning point in a consumer slowdown. Let us begin. It is late evening in a quiet suburban home. The kind of evening where the world feels still, as if the air itself is holding its breath. Outside, the streetlights cast long shadows across the neighborhood. A few porch lights glow. A dog barks in the distance. A car drives by slowly, its headlights sweeping across the living room curtains. Inside, the house is calm. The kids are asleep. The dishwasher hums softly. The laundry basket sits half full on the floor. A single lamp glows in the corner of the living room, casting a warm, golden light across the couch. Michael sits there, leaning back, phone in hand. He scrolls through the news, not looking for anything in particular. It is just a habit, a way to unwind. But tonight, the headlines feel different. Retail sales fall for third straight month. Credit card delinquencies rising across income levels. Layoffs increase in consumer-facing sectors. Household savings continue to decline. Consumer confidence weakens. He pauses on each one. He reads the comments. He reads the analysis. He reads the reactions. He feels a quiet weight settle in his chest. His wife, Sarah, sits beside him folding laundry. She glances over, noticing the way his expression shifts. "Everything all right?" she asks gently. He hesitates. "I think things are changing," he says quietly. She nods. She has felt it too. Earlier that day, she had gone grocery shopping. She noticed the prices again. Higher, always higher. She put back a few items. She chose store brands. She skipped the extras. She watched the total climb anyway. At the checkout, the woman in front of her paid with two different cards. One declined. She apologized softly. The cashier smiled politely, but Sarah saw the embarrassment in the woman's eyes. She recognized it. She had felt it before. Later, she stopped for gas. The man at the next pump filled only half his tank. He stared at the meter as if negotiating with it. He shook his head slightly, then hung the nozzle back up. These moments stayed with her. They were small, quiet, but they told a story. A story she had not yet said out loud. Earlier that week, Michael had talked to his coworker, James. They were standing by the coffee machine at work, the kind of place where casual conversations often reveal deeper truths. James mentioned that his wife's hours had been cut at the restaurant where she worked. He tried to sound casual about it, but Michael could hear the worry in his voice. The kind of worry that sits behind the eyes, even when the words try to hide it. Another coworker mentioned that his daughter had graduated from college but was struggling to find a job. She had applied to dozens of positions. She had gone to interviews. She had followed up, but the responses were slow. The offers were scarce. She was living at home again, trying to stay optimistic. At the hardware store, the cashier mentioned that business had been slower than usual. People were buying fewer tools, fewer supplies, fewer home improvement items. Projects were being postponed. Repairs were being delayed. The cashier shrugged, but his eyes told the truth. At the coffee shop, the barista mentioned that tips had been down for weeks. People were still buying coffee, but they were tipping less. She said it with a smile, but her voice was softer than usual. These stories were becoming more common. Not dramatic, not catastrophic, just heavy. The kind of stories that accumulate quietly until they form a pattern. A pattern that tells you something is shifting beneath the surface. A few days earlier, their neighbor, Tom, had stopped by while walking his dog. It was early evening. The sun was setting. The sky was streaked with orange and pink. The air was cool. Tom mentioned that his company had reduced hours for several departments. He was not laid off, but he was working fewer shifts. He tried to sound optimistic. "It is temporary," he said. But his voice wavered. He looked down at his dog, adjusting the leash. He avoided eye contact for a moment. That was the tell. Another neighbor, Maria, had closed her small business. She had opened a boutique 2 years ago with excitement and hope. She had poured her savings into it. She had built a loyal customer base. But foot traffic had slowed. Sales had dropped. Costs had risen. She held on as long as she could. She cut hours. She ran promotions. She tried everything. But the numbers stopped working. She closed quietly. No announcement, no farewell post, just a handwritten sign on the door. Across the neighborhood, similar stories were unfolding. A teacher mentioned that more students were bringing packed lunches instead of buying meals at school. A mechanic mentioned that customers were delaying repairs. A daycare worker mentioned that enrollment had dipped. A gym owner mentioned that cancellations were rising. A landscaper mentioned that clients were cutting back on services. Each story was small, but together, they painted a picture. A picture of a community feeling the slowdown. Back in the living room, Michael puts down his phone. He takes a deep breath. He looks at Sarah. "It is not just us," he says. "Everyone is feeling it." Sarah nods. "I know," she says. "I see it everywhere." They sit quietly for a moment. The room feels still. The lamp casts a soft glow across the walls. The laundry basket sits untouched. The house feels heavier than usual. This is the moment of realization. The moment when the slowdown becomes real. The moment when the economy stops being a headline and becomes a lived experience. The moment when households understand that something has shifted. It is not a dramatic moment. It is not a breaking news alert. It is not a sudden shock. It is a quiet recognition. A shared understanding that spreads from household to household, neighborhood to neighborhood, community to community. This is the emotional turning point in a consumer slowdown. It is the moment when people stop saying, "Things feel off," and start saying, "This is real." This moment is happening in millions of homes across the country. A young couple postpones their wedding because the budget no longer works. They sit at their kitchen table, looking at spreadsheets, adjusting numbers, trying to make it work. Eventually, they sigh and close the laptop. A recent graduate moves back home because the job market is tighter than expected. She packs her things into boxes, feeling a mix of relief and disappointment. A retiree returns to part-time work because savings are not stretching as far as they used to. He puts on his old uniform, feeling a familiar weight on his shoulders. A single parent picks up an extra shift because the bills keep rising. She tucks her kids into bed, then heads out the door for a late shift. A family cancels their vacation because they want to build a financial cushion. They tell the kids gently. The kids nod, trying to understand. These are not numbers. These are lives. And when enough people feel the same pressure at the same time, the economy changes direction. Confidence shifts. Behavior shifts. Spending shifts. The slowdown deepens. This is the moment when the consumer slowdown becomes a consumer retreat. Not because of fear. Not because of panic. But because of recognition. Recognition that the world has changed. Recognition that caution is necessary. Recognition that the margin for error has narrowed. This is the emotional core of the consumer slowdown. So here is the truth. A consumer slowdown does not begin with a crash. It begins with a feeling, a tightening, a shift in confidence, a moment of realization. And once that moment arrives, the story of the economy becomes the story of the people living inside it. We will continue telling that story, right here on the Daily Economy 24/7. Stay informed, stay aware, and stay ahead.